Okay, hello. Now, how can you write good requirement statements or statements with good characteristics, the ones that we have already mentioned? Okay, let me admit something. There is no formulaic, let's say, way to write excellent requirements. Best teachers are experience and feedback that you receive from those requirements that you have, for those requirements that you have specified. Okay, let's say clear about that first. Goals of writing requirements. So why do we write requirements? Why do we specify requirements? Essentially, the idea, let's say there are two main important goals of writing requirements. First of all, that anyone who reads the requirement should come to the same interpretation as any other reader. That's the first one. The second one, and each reader's interpretation should match what the author intended to communicate. So these are the two reasons why we would like to write, kind of make visual the statements, the requirement statements. And you might remember from previous videos that I mentioned that we use structured English or structured natural language for writing requirements or for representing requirement statements. And using the statement templates essentially helps to achieve that, helps to specify requirements in a consistent fashion. And we have two templates. The first template looks at the statements or set up the statement from the system's point of view. Okay, so this is kind of the structure of the statement, but I think if you see the example it makes a little bit more sense. So it says you start with a precondition or a triggering event, then you explain what the system, how the system should react, what type of response the system should generate. If the requested chemical is found in the chemical stockroom, the system shall display a list of all containers of the chemical that are currently in the stockroom. Okay? If something happens, the system should react like that. That is one way. That is the first template. The second template, we use it from a specific user's point of view, role's point or actor's point of view. Okay. Again, in this case, let me show you the example. The chemist shall be able to reorder any chemical she or he has ordered in the past by retrieving and editing the order details. Okay, in this case you say, okay, the user class or the actor name shall be able to do something to some object in the system, qualifying, and then it continues with some qualifying conditions, response time or quality statement and so on. So these two kind of statements we use, two types of templates that we use to specify requirement statements. In fact, I must say requirement statements for function requirements, mainly for function requirements. You have seen examples of those for non-function requirements and also for quality requirements anyway. Now, what I can do right now is to give you some tips and tricks or guidelines, if you like, so that you can get some experience. Let's say at least some knowledge. Requirements. First of all, requirements documents or statements are not places to practice your writing skills, particularly creative writing skills. Okay, so you don't need to embellish, you don't need to enchant your statements or your document. This is not a kind of a novel. It's very much an engineering, engineering document report that should be very structured. Okay, that's the first thing. Don't write long statements. Be very, very specific. That's it. That's the reason why we call it structured English. Second one. Being easy to read and understand is an essential element of verb-written requirements. So they need to be user-friendly themselves. How can you do that? For instance, keeping statements short and direct. Do not use unnecessary, definitely no adjectives, for instance. We'll come to that. Write requirements in a simple and straightforward language appropriate to the user domain. Avoid any jargon, avoid any kind of a specific terminology. I mean, you can use terminology, obviously, but yeah, again, do not embellish things. There's something that I need to explain about the keyword shell. Somehow it's a conventional, let's say it's a traditional way to use shell in requirement statements. And when we say shell, it means that we describe some system capability that indicates the desired functionality. Okay, so I mean, in the previous examples, when I was giving examples of the templates, you have seen that I used the system shell, or the user shall be able to, and so on. You might as well prefer to use must or need to or have to or something like that, but I mean, you just have to be consistent, okay? And by the way, the traditional convention is that shall means required, should is desired, and may is optional. So be careful. Tips and guidelines. Requirements documents. Okay, I think that's, yeah, twice. Tips and guidelines continued. And what I'm going to do, I'll give you an example. And you're going to tell me, I mean, I'm not be able to hear you. But anyway, what you can do, before I give you the answer for the mistake that's being done in this requirement statements, you can just kind of stop and read the requirement statements and come up with your own idea, and then see and confirm your correct answer after resuming to the video. Okay, so that's the example. Upon product upgrade shipment, the serial number will be updated on the contract line. Okay, that seems to be a kind of a detailed requirement, a solution requirement. Again, targeted at designers, coders, but just read it again. Upon product upgrade shipment, the serial number will be updated on the contract line. Just a small note here that we're writing solution requirements as input for designer and developers, so they should be able to understand it without the need to come back to you and ask a question like, what the hell did you mean here? Okay, that's the kind of idea or criteria, if you like, that you have to keep in mind all the time. Here, what is the problem here? The problem here is that we use kind of a passive voice, and passive voice is not a good idea to use in writing requirement statements. You have to use active voice to make it clear what entity is taking the action. Okay, so in this case, for instance, you should rather write it in this way. When fulfillment confirms that they shipped a product upgrade, the system shall update the customer's contract with a new product serial number. That shows who has to do what. Is it the system that will be doing that thing automatically, or is it the actor who does it using the system? It needs to be clear. Another one. The buyer's credit card on file shall be charged for payment unless the credit card has expired. Okay, there are some issues here already, because even when I read it, it seems to be a little bit ambiguous to me. What do you say? First of all, avoid long narrative paragraphs or statements, okay, that contains multiple requirements all lumped into each other or merged into each other. And particularly those connected with and, unless, except, but, also, further, moreover, in addition, however, nevertheless, and those type of things they shouldn't appear in a requirement statements or SRS, software requirement specification document. Avoid those type of things. Assignment C, avoid those type of things when writing statements. So for instance, how can you deal with that? How can you handle this thing? If the buyer's credit card on file is active, so you can just divide these things into two proper statements. In this case, like the first one is that if the buyer's, so the use of unless is not nice here. If the buyer's credit card on file is active, the system shall charge the payment to that card. If the buyer's credit card on file has expired, I mean, this is the condition, and this should how the system should behave. This is the condition. How the system should behave. Simple. At all costs, avoid fuzzy, unverifiable, ambiguous words, particularly when it comes to user and solution requirements. I mean, what I'm trying to say here is that these type of things can happen in business requirements stage at that level, but avoid it in user requirements and definitely avoid them in solution requirements. What are these kind of ambiguous or unverifiable terms? Many indeed, as you can see some examples here. Reasonably, approximately, generally, appropriately, usually, systematically, quickly, or don't get rid of such things. Don't use them. I would say, I would go so far as saying like no use of adjectives, please. No adjectives, no connectors. Not in structured language, not in requirement statements. Avoid them as much as possible. At least at a minimum, not more than, not to exceed like, yeah, just minimum, maximum. Be very precise there, depending on better, faster. Again, no adjectives. Maximize, minimize, optimize. Optimize a lot. What do you mean by optimization? Several, some, many, multiple, numerous, diverse, various. No. User-friendly, simply reliable, easy to use. No way. The best, the worst thing. It should be measurable, verifiable, testable. We talked about these things. Okay. Before and after, like. Okay, so there's one, just like this is the final example. In fact, you'll see more examples in the handouts, but this is the final example. The corporate project charge numbers should be validated online against the master corporate charge number list if possible. I think you'll be able to spot the issue here quite quickly and easily. This if possible thing is that's bad. And what is this? What do you think the second thing is? Using active voice, using passive voice. So you should rather, like, you can specify it in a better way like this. At the time the requester enters a charge number, the system shall display, not something else, and not the actor, the system shall display an error message if the charge number is not in the master corporate charge number list. Okay, as I said, you'll see more examples in the handouts. That is it for this particular module, and in fact for the entire specification series as well. So I hope you enjoyed it. Good luck with the specification of requirement statements.